Welcome to the boardroom, everyone. I'll be your lead analyst today, and we're going to walk through a comprehensive explainer of the recent, incredibly high-stakes defense and energy agreements signed between India and the UAE. Now, we're not just going to look at these deals as your standard bilateral trade. No, we're treating this as a crucial case study in modern national security. Let's get right into it. So I want you to think about this critical question for a second. How exactly does a massive nation of 1.4 billion people secure its future when 90% of its energy is essentially held hostage by global conflict? We really have to view these new pacts between New Delhi and Abu Dhabi as more than just economic cooperation. This is an urgent, calculated maneuver for sheer economic survival. Here's our briefing agenda for today. We're moving through 6 areas. First, the global energy choke point, then the physical journey of an oil barrel, the power of strategic reserves, the new $5 billion pact, how this shields the domestic consumer, and finally, India's new global role. We'll map out how a macro geopolitical threat hits the everyday consumer.
Starting with Section 1, the global energy choke point and the immediate economic crisis it's causing.
You see, India faces an absolutely massive vulnerability. They are the world's third largest oil importer, and a staggering 90% of their oil comes from outside their borders. Just 10% is sourced domestically. That is a massive reliance on foreign supply chains that are entirely outside of India's direct sovereign control. And the immediate context for that vulnerability is unfolding right now. The simmering tensions from the US-Israel war on Iran have triggered a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as analysts, we have to look objectively at the data here. Regardless of the complex politics at play, the harsh, undeniable economic reality is a severe supply bottleneck that's completely upending global markets. And why does that matter? Well, it causes tangible domestic damage. We just saw a 3% hike in consumer fuel prices across India, and that is a direct, measurable result of that exact blockade. When a choke point closes thousands of miles away, the everyday Indian consumer pays the price at the pump almost instantly. Moving right along to Section 2, the journey of an oil barrel and navigating that fragile supply chain. To really wrap our heads around the supply chain fragility, we need to physically trace a barrel of oil. Step 1, it's extracted in the UAE. Step 2, it has to transit right through that blockaded Strait of Hormuz. And Step 3, it arrives at vulnerable Indian ports. Right now, roughly half of India's imported oil is forced to make that extremely precarious trip. And this journey is under active physical threat. The UAE has accused Iran of targeting its eastern coast emirate of Fujairah. We've actually seen drones and missiles set an oil refinery on fire, injuring 3 Indian workers. So this isn't just about oil flow on a spreadsheet anymore. It's a very real, heightened risk for the 4.3 million Indians living and working as expats in the UAE. Section 3, the power of strategic reserves and building a buffer. Okay, before we break down the new deal, let's make sure we're on the same page. A strategic petroleum reserve, or SPR, is basically a giant national shock absorber. It's emergency storage of crude oil meant to protect against geopolitical shocks. An SPR isn't just a big tank of oil. It's a vital instrument of national security. It gives policymakers the breathing room they desperately need to manage uncertainty without the market going into total panic. So India is physically restructuring its security. They're expanding existing onshore sites at Visakhapatnam, Mangaluru, Padur, and Chandigarh. But the absolute game changer here is their offshore strategy, the potential storage of crude oil right in Fujairah, UAE. By establishing offshore storage over there, India can completely bypass those maritime transit risks. It's an absolutely brilliant geopolitical hedge. Which brings us to Section 4, the $5 billion pact and scaling up defense. The sheer scale of this new UAE-India alliance is just staggering. 30 million. The Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, or ADNOC, is going to store up to 30 million barrels of crude oil in India's strategic reserves. Think about that. This isn't just a basic purchase, it's a deep integration of infrastructure. The UAE is physically storing its vital resources right on Indian soil. And they are backing this up with a massive $5 billion economic investment into India. What's crucial to understand is that this isn't strictly limited to oil. This capital is being deployed to deepen economic, maritime, and cyber defense ties. These 2 nations are basically locking arms across technology, shipping, and military exercises to protect this newly shared energy corridor. Section 5, Shielding the domestic consumer. Let's translate these billions back to the ground level. Let's look at what this means for an everyday household. Spot cargo markets are wildly volatile. They are completely exposed to whatever geopolitical price swings happen that day. Long-term supply agreements, on the other hand, provide stable pricing and guaranteed availability. This new pact aggressively yanks India out of that volatile spot market and locks in long-term liquid petroleum gas supply agreements between ADNOC and Indian Oil Limited.
And energy analysts agree. Take a look at this quote from Sumit Rotolia at Kepler. Securing long-term LPG supply arrangements with the UAE can help India reduce reliance on volatile spot cargo markets. The so what here is super simple. This stability is what shields domestic consumers from sudden supply shocks. It means that even when global markets panic, the price of cooking gas for a family in India actually stays stable.
Finally, Section 6, India's new global role, shifting from a regional to a strategic power. Let's evaluate India's macroeconomic future by objectively weighing the pros and cons here. Look, the immediate risks are still very severe. That 90% import dependency hasn't vanished, the Strait of Hormuz blockade is active, and immediate fuel price inflation is real. But look at the long-term resilience they're building to counter it. A 30 million barrel strategic buffer, offshore storage in Fujairah, and a $5 billion investment locking in stable LPG contracts. The immediate threats are there, but these new buffers severely blunt their impact.
And this UAE pact doesn't exist in a vacuum. Prime Minister Modi's five-nation diplomatic tour expands India's whole global playbook. They're integrating defense, energy, and tech partnerships, not just in the Gulf, but across Europe, in Italy, Sweden, Norway, and the Netherlands. This is a massive structural shift, signaling India's rapid transformation from just a regional player into a highly integrated global strategic power.
So, I'm going to leave the board with this provocative thought to chew on as the geopolitical landscape keeps rapidly shifting. As energy security literally becomes national security, who holds the real power in the next decade? Thank you for joining me for this explainer today. Keep analyzing the data, keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you in our next briefing.